What's up, everybody? Welcome to another episode of the Bodacious Rant. I hope everybody's having a great weekend. And, I hope you guys are here and watch the newest episode of Rings of Power, because it is a spoiler episode as always. So before we get started, do not forget to give us a like and, ring the bell just to stay tuned on all our episodes. And please subscribe just to, have an extra little... a little extra thing to watch when you pull up the YouTube app. So, it's always great. Bern, shall we get started?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, lots of really neat stuff to talk about in this episode.
Indeed. I say we should start with Durin's story. What do you think? Durin and Elrond. Beautiful. The story was pretty minimal for the most part. Durin is still a little untrustworthy of Elrond just because there's that natural suspicion of, elves kind of manipulating both mankind and dwarves. I mean, I don't know if that's, I think it's just past regressions and stuff also. Just each of those races don't get along the best. So I thought that was interesting. But I thought the thing that caught me by surprise the most was we find out that they're mining in Khazad-dûm, I think you called it last week. I don't remember. I think we were talking about it, but you said that you think they were mining for Mithril, and I was like, maybe. Who knows? Just because the Arkenstone wouldn't have come up for another couple thousand years, years before The Hobbit ever started. So, yeah, and that's when Durin's like, oh, we're mining for... I forgot what he said it would be in Dwarf tongue, but he's like, in yours, it would be like a Mithril or something dumb. Mm-hmm. But I just thought that was pretty cool. I thought Mithril was kind of not the most common thing in the Lord of the Rings movies, just because we see that one chainmail shirt made of it. So I just thought that was really cool. You know what I mean?
Yeah, it was cool to get to see basically the origins of Mithril. How that it was actually what was being mined in the mountain of Khazad-dûm, in the mines of Moria, basically. So it leads me to believe, at least I think, that this is sort of the reason that the Balrog that we see in the Fellowship of the Ring, how that gets released, because they make mention of they dug so deep, their ambition took them so far that they were digging down into this in the inside of this mountain, and they unleashed the Balrog. So the fact that they're mining for Mithril now, against the king's wishes, at least that's what it seems like, that Durin is doing it with the slight what am I trying to say? He's, I don't know if he's being allowed by his father to do it, but he's okay, it's a tentative thing that he's not sure of it because of how volatile it is to mine. And as we see in this episode, when the mine sort of collapses in on itself and those dwarves get trapped in there, it's okay, now we see why this process is so dangerous, and why the king has been, for at least we assume these past few years, been a little bit apprehensive of going and mining this Mithril.
Yeah, I'm just curious if the Balrog, how the Balrog does wake up during this, because again, Lord of the Lord of the Rings part where the Fellowship go against the Balrog, essentially, that's not enough for 3,000 years, but in that movie they definitely disturbed it, and that's what woke it up in Moria and stuff like that. So I'm curious to see if they do wake it up, how are they going to stop it this time? Is it going to go... I'm just curious how that's gonna work out, just because even Gandalf was the only one who's really strong enough to do it. So is that that dude that fell from the sky, is he gonna be the one to stop him just because he's the only one that has sort of magic capabilities, or are they gonna use Mithril to help stop him? I'm very curious. So a lot of interesting developments there. And Elrond is still just being a good friend to Durin and stuff. I thought that was their moments were really nice.
Mm-hmm. And it seems that there's been some pretty significant passage of time, right? Because it seems like the dwarves and the elves are starting to build the tower for Celebrimbor. So it's how much time has passed exactly? I don't think they make any mention. I know in the other fantasy series that we're watching, House of Dragon, they mention it's been this many years since this happened, or they haven't done that in this show. So kind of keeping track of it. It's okay, how long has it been? Because it seems at least from what Celebrimbor is saying, it's been a little bit of a while. And when he's talking about how Durin's been avoiding him all this time, and why he sends basically Elrond to go talk to him and stuff. So I don't know. It was like, okay, like how far along are we in this story exactly?
Yeah, I mean, because then that just causes a lot more complications. Like how long, like, because if Galadriel and what's the human's name again?
Oh, Hal Brand?
Yeah, if they've only been in Numenor for only a certain amount of time, like they weren't supposed to be there very long, only like a few days or something, I thought, or a few weeks. But yeah, that's just a fair point. There really is it's no real indication. I assume that it's happening still like at a steady pace of time, not like years or anything, maybe like days and like maybe a couple weeks or something. Because the
Mm-hmm.
dwarves do build fast, and they are, it is elves and dwarves helping to build this thing. I think so. At least I don't know. I'm not 1,000% sure on that, but that's a fair question to bring up, Bern.
Yeah, I guess that's true. It could be a more testament to their abilities. You know how quickly they're able to get this done. Because he does mention like, I want this done by spring. We don't know exactly what season they're in currently, but yeah, it seems like a very short amount of time that he wants this tower built for them. So I guess yeah, that is more a testament to how good the dwarves are as these master builders that they've been made out to be.
Exactly. So I mean, I'm glad we got to see them again in this episode because last one Durin and Elrond weren't around at all, and then Arondir's a very interesting, another just kind of weird like development with him. It kind of made sense near the end of his like plot line, essentially what happened, but we finally meet Adar, and that's basically just another almost very deformed dwarf, like he's starting to turn into an orc from the looks of it, kind of.
Or elf, you mean?
Uh,
Right? Yeah, because he had like the pointy ears. It
yeah.
looked like, right?
Did I say dwarf? I meant
Yeah.
elf. Okay, I meant like yeah, he's a very deformed elf essentially. Like I think he's starting to turn into an orc because, I mean that's how orcs were. They were elves that were tortured and mutilated to become those creatures and stuff. So, and then we find out that Adar means father, which was very interesting. That he's the father of these orcs, which I'm like, huh. A lot of the show is definitely creating a lot of speculation on who could be Sauron. Is it Adar? Is it Halbrand? Is it the dude that fell from the sky? It's kind of good, but at the same time, I could see a lot of issues with that. Like, okay, you guys are just putting too much in real quick. Either way, it's working for me. But
Yeah, it has been fun to speculate like who could be like who we see in the Lord of the Rings, like who's potentially Sauron, who's potentially the Witch King, and all these other like evil characters that we've seen. Like basically we're all just kind of wondering who's going to be the unfortunate people to turn to the dark side basically. But yeah, like the whole like father thing, that I thought it was very interesting, like that moment when he's like basically shepherding this one orc to like his death, where like he's sort of like caressing him and then stabs him to put him out of his misery. Like it showed like he genuinely cared about these orcs, which I don't think we've ever seen in the Lord of the Rings things, where like the leaders are affectionate of their minions basically. I thought that was a nice different sort of angle on a potential bad guy that we're seeing.
yeah, and then Bronwyn or whatever her name is, son. Um, he's starting to use that dark hilt a little bit more, which is interesting. And Arondir just comes in and saves him like a total badass that he is. I thought that was a really well done scene. Especially when he catches the arrow that was gonna hit him, shot it back at him. Was like, oh shit! He caught it that's for the trailer. And because I was like, wait, how the fuck did you get out? What, like, weren't you just held prisoner just a second ago? That's his story. I feel like is jumping around a little bit because, like, I remember at the end of episode 2, I didn't even realize he got caught, by something. So again,
No,
I
I
don't know
mean,
if I missed it.
yeah, it was all there when he was in the tunnel. He got taken by the orcs, and then in here, Adar was the one who told him like, I'm gonna let you go because I want you to give the people like a message. And then
Yeah,
it's basically like, okay, like join me, like, and your lives will be spared.
yeah. So he's gonna just try and turn more people into orcs, or essentially like just slaves, like they were digging the tunnels and stuff. So, and
Yeah,
again, it's
because
all taking place in the Southlands too, which is essentially Mordor. So,
because like these are all people who were descendants of the people who sided with Morgoth. Like the at least the humans that are left here in Middle Earth, they're the ones that were on the evil side. Back in the day when Morgoth was running around and tearing things up. So I kind of like that idea of like, okay, he's sort of like trying to build his army of like, okay, who are the potential sympathizers that still remain. Like because we do see with that old barkeep that Theo has like a little bit of a run in when he recognizes like the scar from the blade. How he's talking about like they got to prepare for the coming of Sauron. So it's like, okay, they're still humans, you know, all these centuries later that are still loyal to Morgoth's cause, and I thought that was kind of interesting.
Yeah, that was definitely like, you motherfucker. Like, no, like, you came off as the nice old bartender. It's like, no, you're a dick. You're just another cult person. So I thought
Mm-hmm.
that was very interesting. And then again, Galadriel's is still like, every time she comes on and her storyline comes on, I think I get the most excited just because I want to see more Galadriel action. We haven't seen any since episode 1, so I'm like, God damn it. I want to see her chop off some heads. But very much like a Gundor situation over there with Numenor and the Queen Regent, how she just doesn't want to. She wants Galadriel out of there, but you know, in the end, it is for she's trying to just find the best way for her and her people of Numenor. She's not. I don't think she outright hates Galadriel. She's just doing it out of superstition, especially because when she takes her to the tower after trying to find her father and stuff to like Galadriel trying to deal with him. We see the Palantir that Sauron uses, one of the lost seeing stones, and they both saw that same vision of just Numenor flooding completely and just being destroyed, which
Mm-hmm.
was like, damn, that's some crazy shit. Um, Again, just very interesting because I want to say that Palantir is definitely like, because they did say not all these stones will have different outcomes and stuff. So I think that Palantir is like the evil one, especially because Sauron could use it for like to communicate with Sauron. So I don't know. I don't know if I'm just like overthinking it. You know what I mean?
I mean, yeah. I mean, it can go either way. We really don't know the nature of this particular Palantir, and if it is the same one that we see that Saruman uses in the first two Lord of the Ring movies. But it was interesting to see that the Queen Regent, like her apprehension to wanting to help, you know, Galadriel in her cause. It wasn't stemming from a place of racism that we've seen with the Numenorians, how they, you know, have this like almost this hatred or resentment of elves. Like at first, I thought that was the reason why she was like, you know, she wasn't hearing Galadriel out, but it turns out like she was working based off of these visions that she had and that her father, you know, the king had of, you know, Numenor sinking into the ocean basically, and that Galadriel was sort of the herald of that. So they were sort of interpreting it in a way that, okay, this is, if this woman is the one that causes it or is somehow involved in this happening. So I did like that development, that it wasn't because of just like, oh, like I don't like you and your people. It's more like I'm more just afraid for my people and my home, you know. So I thought that was really cool, and was a better character trait than what it could have easily been just like a, oh, I just don't like you guys.
Yeah, it couldn't have been a reap. Again, it's like I was getting the Gundor vibes, but it didn't go the same route that that one actor, I forget his name, but he played Boromir's dad, like the steward of Gundor, where he just completely
Mm-hmm.
lost it and rejected all help. So I'm glad. Like I said, I'm glad. Like you, I'm glad that she came to her senses, because once Galadriel was getting on that boat away, that's when the white leaves fell, and she was like, "Oh shit, that's not good." It's like, yeah, no shit, Sherlock, because Galadriel is essentially a god to you people, so you should be more respectful, peasants. Um, and every time I see Isildur on screen, I just keep thinking of the movie Isildur.
Yeah, me too. It's here,
I
dude.
can't. I
Toss it
can't
into the
help
fire.
it. I can't help it. But
It also
I'm
doesn't
very,
help that whenever we see him and he's hearing like the little whispers of whatever that could be, I don't know, but something in the distance like calling his name, like Isildur, and like that almost that black speech. It's, again, it just keeps reminding me of that. But that is sort of interesting. Like, why is he hearing these voices and where are they coming from?
I mean, I think it's already kind of touching upon his greed. Not like, because not that he's greedy in like a very material way, but he wants more out of life. He doesn't want to just follow in his father's footsteps. So I think
Mm-hmm.
like maybe not. Well, the ring doesn't exist yet, so I don't know what that could be. I'm very curious though. Like, what is drawing you to this whole thing? Um, but you know, him and
Mm-hmm.
Elendil and all those other, and like the two friends that got kicked out. I'm glad that they're going to join Galadriel to go to Middle Earth and stuff. So this is the beginning of like the elves and humans kind of rebuilding that friendship for the great battle of Mordor. So, like I said, a lot of good stuff happening.
And that moment was a pretty cool hype moment when they're seeing who wants to volunteer to go on these ships with Galadriel to Middle Earth where yeah, like earlier when Isildur sort of like got him and his buddies fired from the shipping crew. It's like, oh, okay, like he felt bad and wanted to like redeem himself, and sort of like make up for what he did. And it was sort of like a little bit of a little nod to when he eventually is going to turn and decide to keep the ring instead of throwing it into the fire, where he makes these very rash actions that he doesn't take into account the ramifications for the people around him. And he's a little bit like jump first, look later type of person. And it will be interesting to see like how his character develops into the one that we sort of know of from the beginning of the first Lord of the Rings movie.
Yeah, and it's funny because I always pin him as like this very greedy character. It's like, no, the ring just had a way of corrupting like humans, but like, oh, just a way of corrupting everybody. It really didn't matter who had it or not. So, because he's not a bad character. Like nobody so far is like a truly villainous person. But I think Hal Brand essentially is either going to be possessed by the spirit of Sauron, or he is Sauron, but maybe doesn't know it yet. Because she did say he is the heir to the king of the Southlands. Like he's supposed to be the future king. So it's like, Sauron was king of the Southlands as well. So we will have to see what happens with that. But
yeah, and we do see that in this episode he still has that affinity for manipulating people. So when he's like sort of convinces Galadriel to like look at things from a different perspective, how she's very headstrong and she's not sort of like looking at the finer details of why the queen was very apprehensive of helping her. She's kind of like a little bit too bold and a little too headstrong, and he's sort of like pushing her in the right direction. And he was kind of doing the same for that other guy, Farazan, that's on the King's Council. Oh, I don't know what his role is in particular. I know he's not like the king or the queen or anything, but he seems like to be a pretty high up in that sort of like authority. And the fact that he was sort of riling up those people to turn against the elves and stuff earlier, that leads me to believe that there will be conflict going forward. If the queen is in fact going to be going with Galadriel to Middle Earth, does she leave him behind to sort of take over Numenor, and does his sort of like racist ways take hold in the city? Like what's gonna happen there with that character?
It's again a lot. This show can definitely go in many directions, and hopefully, like again, they can keep making great. So far, like I'm digging everything on this show. I want a little more. I just need more Galadriel action. That's all I want. But until next week, guys, let us know what you thought in the comments. Did you love this episode? Are you feeling like it's a little slow? What do you want to see next week? We'd love to know in the comments, guys. And, again, we got House of Dragon, our review coming up soon, so don't be afraid to check that out. But until next time, guys, stay bodacious and keep on ranting for the both of us.
Absolutely, everybody. As always, be good, be safe, and catch y'all on the next one.